Hello, everybody. Tasha here, Tasha Shore, your partner in parenting, and I'm super excited to have Amy Lang. She's an amazing sex educator at Birds and Bees and Kids, and we are going to lead this really important masterclass today on raising resilient boys in a sexualized world. We have been thinking about what Amy's going to share with you and listening to your questions, and we're really excited to get started. So thank you so much, Amy.
My pleasure. Happy to be here since it's boy central at my house, and I know it's boy central at your house. And boys are in a sticky place and time. And I think ultimately it's going to end up okay, but we're going to have to help them navigate.
I totally agree. And, even just before we got on, I was looking at questions and noticing that people were asking, or one person mentioned that they have girls actually, and they're worried that parents of boys aren't having these conversations with their boys. So I just want to say we are having them, and this is why this is so important. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to either join us live or be watching this as a replay if that's when you're watching it. So Amy, do you want to say anything else about yourself?
Yeah.
Not everybody knows who you are.
Yeah, well, some people don't, so I'll just be quick. Okay. So I am a sexuality educator, and my focus is on kids from age 2 to 12, essentially. And I got my start because when my son was 4, I realized I was going to have to talk to him about sex, and I'd been a sex educator for over 16 years. And I was like, yay, a 4-year-old. I'd rather talk to a pregnant 14-year-old. And that led me,
Absolutely.
I know, like, please, I'll take a pregnant 14-year-old. That sounds like, easy peasy. And I also have a background as an adult educator. And when I realized that there wasn't the kind of information I wanted that matched my values out there, that the only way for me to kind of get sex education appeared to be just through books, I thought I'd combine my 2 favorite things, talking about sex and working with adults. And so I started Birds and Bees and Kids. So I help parents, and then I also work with organizations that are youth serving. So preschools, daycares, Boys and Girls Clubs. I work with the Air Force Youth and Family Services programs. So that's the sort of biz side. But then on the mama human being side, I have a 17-year-old who's a senior in high school. And much to his chagrin, we've been talking about all of this since he was about 5. And I've also been married to the same person for 25 years. And he's a guy. So, and I'm in Seattle, just in case you're wondering where I am. Where in the world am I?
Awesome.
So that's me.
Great. Well, thank you so much again for being with us. You guys are in store for a treat. Amy is awesome. And without further ado, let's dive in, shall we?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Awesome. And I was thinking it would be good to start with, I don't know, kind of what seems the most basic or simplest of the topics, which might seem hard to many of you out there, but just this idea of how and when do we start talking to our boys about sex?
Great question. And I think this is something that lots of folks struggle with. And what I think we all need to remember is that how and when we learned about sex, for most of us, is absolutely not going to work in today's modern world. So most kids and most parents believe that the time to start talking to kids about these issues is in 5th grade, usually when elementary schools provide some kind of sexual health education. And this is super common. And what's happened is we've all decided that that's the time. And, in 1973, that was probably pretty advanced. But here we are, 200 years later, technologically, frankly, things have changed. And this has actually always been the truth. But because of the way US culture is, we really do a good job of, rocking the puritanical thing and trying to pretend like, we don't need to talk to our kids until they're pre-puberty.
So they're really virgins when they get married, if they get married.
Right. Thank you for reminding me of that. I'm just going to pop up and remind Milo too. What we've learned mostly from looking at other countries that are doing really well in terms of their teenager sexual health outcomes, so we're talking, the Netherlands, frankly, is that earlier is better. And for those of you who've hung out with me before, you already know the answer. The best age to start the conversations is about 5, and which seems super young, but the reality is that in countries where kids have healthy and comprehensive sex education, starting in kindergarten, going all the way through, those kids make better decisions. Nobody's pregnant. That's not true, but way lower pregnancy rate, way less STIs, better relationships, just better sexual health outcomes in general. And what I've noticed in the past, however many, 13, 14 years of doing this work, let's just say 13 because 14 sounds too long. I've noticed that parents are getting more on board with talking to kids sooner rather than later, because they're able to see that when you start the party sooner, it's just easier. And when you're starting later, it's more complicated. One of the questions, a couple of the questions that we already have are from parents of older kids where the kids are like, no, thank you. And that's developmentally typical. So if you open the door early, then it makes it a ton easier later because they're used to hearing the stuff come out of your mouth.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm imagining that there are parents out there going, okay, well, that's great. Start talking to my son when he's 5. What am I supposed to say?
Yeah. So the best thing to do is to get yourself a book. And if you go to my website, birdsandbeesandkids.com, go look at my books pages, my resource. It's the bookstore page. And there are all my favorite sex books for kids. That sounds terrible. They're all my favorite books about sexuality for kids. And that's the easiest way to start the conversation. So with parents of younger kids, there's a great book called It's Not the Stork. If you have kids that are 6 and older, It's So Amazing is fabulous. And then if you have kids that are 10, 11 and older, It's My Body. And so the books age up. They're going to feel really too full of information for your child, but they're not. They're comprehensive and sex positive, which means they present sexuality as a healthy, wonderful part of life. And they talk about how babies are made in different kinds of families and safe touch. And they really help parents because instead of being like trying to do what we're doing, hey, here's how a baby's made. We're looking at each other, you know, we're grown-ups. You read a book, which is a normal part of family life, and the kids get the information there. They're not paying attention to your sweaty upper lip and, you know, your 3 glasses of wine that it takes you to get through. So those books are a really good guide. I just recommend that everyone just start with baby making, well, body parts, correct names for body parts, and then move on to the usual way babies are made. And then if things went differently in your family, if you're 2-mom family, 2-dad family, if you use IVF, then you just say, in our family, this is how you came to be. Yeah. Everyone's afraid of penis enters vagina. So if you just get that out of the way early on, it makes everything easier.
I love that. Just get that out of the way.
And you'll be surprised. I mean, kids under the age of 7 or 8, when you explain how things work, their usual response is just like, oh, huh. Sometimes they say, did you do that? And then you get to say, just the one time or just twice, or, you know, actually you don't get to say that. But you just say, yeah, it's part of our, yeah, that's how, you know, babies are made usually. And, you know, sex is an important part of our relationship. And it's part of being an adult and being in an adult relationship because it feels good, not for kids.
Yeah. And I think about this a lot, and I hear this a lot in terms of what age you're going to start talking to your children about sex. And we have this fear that of going too early, right? We don't want to expose them to things that they're not ready for. Right. But what I found, and I hear you say this over and over again, is that they're in this stage where they'll kind of take in what they're ready to take in. So we can offer, and they understand things in their own unique kid ways. And it doesn't mean that we want them to misunderstand, but I think our fear is that they start asking us sort of intimate questions. And actually, there's a much more of a danger of that if we wait until later. Yeah. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah. So part of why this feels like maybe too much is because of the way we were parented around sexuality. When you don't get any information until you're in the 5th grade, you get a lot of messages about sex not being okay to talk about there's body shaming. Everything's very, I mean, heterosexist or heterocentric, which I'm just going to take a time out. Because oftentimes these conversations are very heterosexually focused. And I'm just absolutely open and believe that all kinds of sexualities are okay and great. But part of the reason I kind of hang out in the land of heterosexuality is because most people are straight. So we'll kind of hang in that realm. That's what most kids see. And so we will absolutely talk a little bit, hopefully, about being gay or not being straight when it comes to boys, because it can be really hard on them and confusing. So don't get, I'm totally down, and it's easier to get these conversations started in this particular arena. So disclaimer over.
Okay. I have two questions that I don't know how am I going to remember them both now. So one is, in terms of, let's just to finish up the talking about sex, when we're talking to our boys, some people definitely feel like it should be the dad, if there is a dad in the family, to be talking to his son. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't care who it is, and kids frankly don't care who it is either. At the end of the day, I just want at least one trustworthy adult that's willing to take this on. And, you know, one thing we do know is that boys would rather talk, I often say this kind of funky thing, which they'd rather talk to their dads about their nuts and their moms about their hearts. So if there's a dad on the scene and he's willing to pick up pieces of this, awesome. If you're it, I mean, I know that most of the people that signed up for this are women. If you're the mom and you're single mom or a 2-mom family, you know, you're it, most likely. So don't be afraid of, don't be afraid to talk to your opposite gender child. They really don't care. And all you need to do is, like, you know, I say to Milo, like, I ain't got your parts, I ain't got your world, but this is what I know, right? And here's what I know. And so just call it out. Just say, I'm not like you physically, and I don't quite know what's happening for you, but this is what I know, and this is what I remember, and then steer them towards trustworthy resources.
Great. Excuse me, I have to cough for 1 second.
I'm gonna do tea.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, I have something to drink too. I'm gonna have a sip.
Okay. Y'all have a sip too, and breathe. Yeah. Breathe. Everybody breathe.
It's all gonna be okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing this splash dance thing today. Okay.
Yeah, I had a question that came in ahead of time, actually, from a client of mine. I believe her kids, she's in my community, around 7 and 9, 2 boys, and she asked about sexual play and your reference to, or your discussion around heterosexuality and homosexuality reminded me of this question, because so many parents of young boys get all flipped out, and the boys sometimes themselves get flipped out if they explore sexually with other boys. Can you talk a little bit about what is normal and what is not? Her question in particular was like, you know, they will often, they'll touch each other's penises or touch each other. And she will say, you know, privates are privates. And then one of the boys will say, well, I told him he can touch it.
Right. Yeah.
So what do they do? Yeah,
great question. So with boys, you know, their penises just hang off the front of them. And, you know, I don't have one, so I don't know what that's like.
I just have to laugh for a second, just like the image.
Because they do, right?
In my household.
Right. You have 3 of them. 4, right?
Yeah, 4.
Yeah, sorry. So, and they go up and down, and they get bigger and smaller, and, you know, and so they're fascinating, and then they're also part of their body. And so it makes it, I mean, if we just are looking at this from a clinical, you know, kind of, let's put our professional hats on, that it's really, really common for boys to be curious about their body and other kids' bodies. And just from a sexual development standpoint, little kids, like under the age of 6 or so, they will sword fight when they pee, which is very common. They will, you know, pee on each other. They'll pee with each other. That one of my friends' preschool son was having penis meetings with one of his friends where they would just compare their penises and then go off and play. So this is super common. It's really the only concern about is that if we don't correct the behavior, if we don't say, hey, it's not okay or safe to play games with privates, that they're a special sensitive part of your body. No one should touch your privates, and it's not okay for you to touch anyone else's privates. And we need to be really clear about that message, because if kids are playing games with privates, then what can happen is that it's easier to take advantage of the child. And if we don't say, hey, this isn't okay, then they don't have any way to moderate what's okay and what's not okay. So if Uncle Creepy wants to play a game with privates, or Aunt Creepy wants to play a game with privates, they don't know like they play private games with their, you know, their brother or their cousin. So why not play with Uncle Creepy? So it's really a safety issue. And then go ahead.
But I'm a little bit confused. Can you clarify? Because on the one hand, you're saying it's normal. Okay, yep. They're going to do this with their cousin or their friend. On the other hand, we need to tell them don't do that so that adults don't do it.
Right. Right. Because if you're leaving if kids, I mean,
you're just not shaming, like you're acknowledging that it's happening and not shaming, but also giving information that we don't want to be doing this. We want to keep our penises to ourselves.
Right. So like nose picking. We don't, like, our kids are picking their noses, and what do? We often smack their hand out of their nose, right? Or we say, hey, that's gross, you know, germs. Let's not do that. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, we don't want to shame the kids. We understand that nose picking is typical. We understand that kids will play doctor and that sort of thing. That's considered typical. And if it goes unchecked, if we know it's happening, then it can lead to problems later on down the line. And most of us have memories of playing doctor where we were agreeing to play. It was usually with a good friend. When kids get older, even boys may practice kissing. They may play games that involve body touching or rubbing. This is also considered really common and typical. It doesn't mean your kid is gay. It doesn't mean they're straight. It doesn't necessarily mean anything until they're in puberty. And then, you know, people who are gay, they say they've always known they're gay. So for some kids, it is serious business. But when they hit puberty and they're hanging out and fooling around with same gender kids, then probably not straight, right? So bottom line, when to worry is if the behavior, especially in kids who are before puberty, and even sometimes into puberty, if the behavior is adult-like. So it's something adults would do in terms of sexuality, that's a cause for concern. If you correct the behavior and they keep doing it, that's a cause for concern. Okay. If your gut says, oh, this ain't right, that's, you know, it's like your adult concern is high. And when you sort of assess and say, like, do grownups have penis meetings? You're probably going to say, I mean, I know some grownups have penis meetings, but most grownups do not, like, hey, let's hang out, have a penis meeting, and then go get some beer. Like, they don't roll like that, right? So you can just kind of flip it. And the bottom line is that kids engage in sexual play, and that's the technical term. And boys do, girls do, and it's just a normal part of their sexual development. The problem is us. So we see this happening, we freak out, and it can be really damaging.
So that parent who asked me that question about her boys who will do this, touching each other's penises, and when she says no, they're being persistent about it. Like they insist, well, I said he could. How would you help her get through that?
So at that age, how old are the boys?
7 and 9.
Yeah, I would just say to her, I would say to them, you know what, that's the rule. And it's about keeping you safe. So the older brother, you can always say, hey, you know, it's your job to make sure that a yucky person doesn't try to, or a not safe person doesn't try to touch his private. So if you're doing it and you're safe, then, you know, it might make a problem for him, and same for you. So the rule is, if you can't keep your hands off each other, then you can't take baths together. You know, you're going to maybe not be able to be naked together. And the pushback is typical, and the parent needs to be firm and kind about it. And sometimes when you just say that's the rule, especially in that age range, those kids are really rules oriented.
Okay, great.
Let's all breathe. Yeah. Not panting, like a cleansing, mindful breath. Because this stuff is really hard to talk about, but it's so important. And I think it really connects back to our main, you know, topic, which is how do we help our boys be respectful? How do we talk to them about consent? You know, how do we help them navigate what's seeming to be a trickier and trickier world in terms of sexuality?
Perfect. That's what I just wanted to transition into, because that was really my incentive for bringing you on here, is that I think this world is really confusing for boys.
Yeah.
You know, they're getting so many sexualized messages through the media. They've got friends, acquaintances, whatever, sending them, you know, sexual, you know, Snapchats, naked selfies. So even if we're able to say to our sons, you know, don't ever send a naked picture of yourself, et cetera, like they're getting them back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's part of it has to do with like, I think us, this generation of parents, is like, we didn't go through this technological piece around sex.
Yeah.
And that's hard. What tips do you have for parents around that?
So I just want to back up a little bit, because one of the pieces that in that like sexual behavior thing is really around consent.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the messages that parents should be instilling in their kids about sexuality and sexual behaviors is that everyone agrees. Everyone agrees when it's time to have sex with someone or do something sexual. Both people agree. That means they both say yes. And with young kids, we don't want to encourage them to play doctor, right? So you need to be really clear that, you know, sexual stuff is for when you're older. You know, at my house, we don't say for marriage because we don't believe that. So when we say when you're older, when you're a teenager, when you're, you know, in college. A girl can dream, when you're older, and really helping them understand consent and what that means. And it just means agreement at the end of the day. Yeah. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, just like, but that agreement is confusing, right? Like, agreement is an agreement, somebody who just doesn't say no.
If, one of the things that my favorite sex educator, Dan Savage, says, it's good. He says it's good giving and game. So you really get an affirmative, like, yeah, I'm into this, especially as things advance sexually. So hand holding, that's something that somebody can negotiate pretty without saying, may I hold your hand? I mean, you can ask, and the other thing too is helping our boys.
Kind of all the excitement out of it.
Right. But you can help our boys read body language, right? So you can say to them, oh, did you see how your brother just pulled back from you? Or did you did you notice how when your friend said that to that girl, she did this? That tells you that she's not comfortable. So starting to train them to read people's body language, and that can probably start around when they start being less like it's all about me, me, me. So maybe around 11, 12, 13. I mean, all along you can do this, because the consent issue is hard, because may I kiss you, right? May I, touch you over the shirt? May I go under the shirt? May I go over the pants? May I go under the pants? It's become this negotiation, and the nuance is kind of lost, but with this is a pendulum swing. Like, our boys are going to have to be very careful, very cautious, learn to read body language better than any man ever has. No offense out there. And it's to be protective. It's to be protective. And, kids, when they're in the heat of the moment, especially like, I'm a woman and I have sex with men. And when I was young, I would oftentimes say yes to stuff just to not make a fuss. So the people I was fooling around with, it was really their job to be like, are you into this? Like, are you cool with this? Like, even just to check in. Are you okay? Are you cool? I can stop. We can stop. Like, just offering that. Isn't like, if somebody had said, are you cool? And I might have said yes, but I also might have said no. Right? I might have been like, I'm actually not down for this. And they would have moved along, again, respectfully. And then that builds resilience. Like, rejection is a part of life, right? If we're protecting our kids all the time, oh, we don't say no to Johnny. Like, those parents were like, sorry if you're out there, but I'm judgy. We don't say no to Johnny because we want his self-esteem to be high. Well, if Johnny never hears the word no, then he ain't gonna be a good partner, right? Because he's going to think the world should be in his lap. Not every kid, not every family, but it's okay to give our kids limits, because that's how they learn. And of course, they are watching us way more than they are listening to us. So if you're like recoiling while your spouse is kissing you, then your kid's going to be like, oh, that's normal, right?
That's a really, really good point.
Right? Or if your parent doesn't say, sometimes I'm just not in the mood for don't touch me. And I'll just say, don't touch me. Right? And my spouse respects me. Right? Or like, he's smelly, he's a contractor. And I'll be like, yeah, nope, love ya, stay away. And he totally respects that. So, we need our men to be modeling this kind of behavior. And as moms, we need to say, we need to let our boys see us put on the brakes. You know what? I don't feel like a hug right now. And then your spouse, doesn't matter what sex your spouse is, or can say, oh yeah, no sweat, right? Totally modeling.
I love that. And I'm wondering, how much do you think of our own story is appropriate to share with our kids?
This is an excellent question. So my personal belief, and not everyone agrees with me, is that we should not share our traumas with our kids. Our kids need to see us as whole and healthy and functional, even if we're not. Because when we tell our children, you know, I was molested from the time I was 4 until I was 14 by my stepfather, that's really hard for kids to understand. It's very scary to them. I think by the time our kids' brains are more developed, so in their 20s, we can say, hey, you know, I never talked to you about this, but I just wanted to let you know that this happened to me. Maybe even wait longer. I know some folks believe that, you know, I talked to a mom one time who said, oh yeah, my kids know I was sexually abused because I want to protect them. I don't want this to happen to them. And that's about, frankly, I think that's about her. I think that's about her. So one thing we can talk to our kids about that is safe ground is about, like, we can say a friend, and you are your own friend. So you can say, hey, one of my friends, this happened to her. She was date raped. This is what happened. All of us have a friend who was date raped. Most of us were probably had some kind of date rapey thing go on. So you can tell stories about other people. You can tell stories about, like, the first time you had sex. Like what we've said to Milo is, like, you know, the first time I had sex, like, I picked a guy, my best friends pressured me. They told me I should just get it out of the way. And good news is I picked a nice guy, and now I'm like, holy shit. I was almost 18 and he was 23. What the hell is that? Right? You know, I would not recommend that, but I didn't tell Milo that. And then conversely, his dad was in love with his first girlfriend. They were at her house. Her mom knew she was birth controlled. There were condoms. Like, that was the better thing. So we talk about, like, that's what I want for you. Like, don't do what I did, because I don't feel good about that. I mean, I feel 83% good about it, but Carrie feels 100% good about his experience. So yeah, my advice is don't share your traumas. They don't want to hear you were date raped. They don't want to hear you were raped. They don't want to hear that you were sexually abused or assaulted, unless there's some compelling reason to tell them. You know, I'm not a person who lies, but I am a person who can skirt the truth. So that's just my advice. They need to see us as whole and healthy.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I want to wrap back around to consent again, because there is something that I think many parents of young boys fear, which is that our boy is going to make mistakes, because he is.
Right.
And adults get very scared and confused.
Yes.
And there's a fear that he's going to be accused of sexual harassment or sexual assault. What can we do to, you know, mitigate that? How can we do all that we can to prevent that from happening?
Well, I think, first of all, laying a really healthy groundwork around, like, what healthy sexuality looks like, establishing early on that this is something people agree to do, demonstrating healthy relationships, talking about what a healthy relationship looks like establishing that, those kinds of communications. I call it the information overload time, which is really between 4 and 12, where you can just, like, shovel info at them, like, here we go, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about this. And then when they get to be 12, your communication style needs to change and be more peer-to-peer. So your tone, your attitude is how you and I would talk to each other. But you're still their parent. So you don't advocate, that's not whatever the word is. You don't advocate your throne. Advocate? I don't know what the word is.
Abdicate.
Abdicate your throne. Thank you. I have other skills. Don't ask me to spell anything. Yeah, so you don't abdicate your throne as their parent. You maintain that relationship, and you still can give them information. It just looks different. So yeah, it's a total worry. A mom just emailed me because her son was with his girlfriend and they didn't have sex, but maybe they did have sex. Something sexual went on, hand down the pants, her pants. And she agreed to it at the time, and then has now said that he basically sexually assaulted her, when at the time he thought she was okay with it. And so now she's changed her mind and come around to, she didn't want to do that. And now he's like, like, she seemed good to me. And now she's doing this to me. So I think part of it is really being clear about, you've got to check first, and you've got to read their body language, and, you know, talking about
like she was into it isn't enough is what I'm hearing.
Right. Well, she may have been faking and just saying, are you cool with this? And giving her an opportunity to say no. And then that also gives him an opportunity to say, you know, I asked and she said it was okay. And so it's just complicated. And again, it's good news because the boys have had it, the big boys have had it really good for a really long time. And we get the shit end of the stick. And again, I just want to point out that we are hanging out in heterosexual land. But again, that's where most of this yucky crap goes down, between guys and girls. So guys and gals, I'm trying not to refer to women as girls unless they're an actual girl. So that's where this power imbalance is. And the responsibility should be on the person who's got more power. And you know, until I don't know when, at some point that's going to hopefully even out or switch. And no, I don't want that to switch. It'll even out. So our boys do better asking, our girls do better saying, hey, no, thanks. They're empowered to say no, thanks. And I think that's what's coming. So they're getting, they're a little retroactive now, but what we want this is to be like, you know what, I'm not so into this. And then they got our sons to say, yeah, okay, that's down. I'm cool with that. Why don't we just make out and move along? And go ahead.
I was going to ask, what about, so this is more of a teen issue, but what about things that happen on, you know, in elementary school or preschool? What sorts of questions do you get from parents? Like, I mean, I know there are issues of things like more of like the sharing or exploring that might be seemingly innocent that happens that then adults go crazy about.
Yeah, so usually the adults are the problem.
Right.
Especially with kids who are under the age of 11 or so. So our a priori response is, this is abuse, because we don't understand childhood sexual development. So if part of every parenting class was sexual behavior and sexual development, we wouldn't freak out so much. So parents, no matter what's happening or what they hear, our job is to put our big girl underpants on or a big boy underpants on and suck it up and pretend to be calm. And then ask gentle questions and say, you know, oh, whose idea was it to play that way? Because they almost always think about it in terms of a game. You know, if you harken back, I played Getting Married, I played Boyfriend, Girlfriend, and there was some body rubbing and touching, and it was with my female friend, and I should say. And we were close friends, and we were in agreement to play that way. And so it was a game. And you know, finally at some point I was like, oh, this is feeling weird to me, because I was older and becoming self-aware and thinking, oh, does this mean I'm gay, right? So with parents, you know, and hearing about this, first of all, you just need to understand the kids are going to experiment, and think about it in terms of experimentation. And, you know, again, that friends, they need to be close friends. They need to have a regular play relationship. Everybody needs to be in agreement. And so you can ask, like, you know, if they're close friends, you know, if they have a regular play relationship, you know, if they're the same age. You know, if one kid's a bossy bully, and you know if another kid's like a little less so. So the power differential, we want everybody equal. And so if we as adults understand that, then we can more readily assess the situation. And even if it's clearly not okay, like abundantly not okay, we can still stay calm, because at the end of the day, they need us. They need us. When we get all big and freak out, what they hear is, there's something wrong with me.
I'm really glad that you said that, because things are going to go awry.
Yes.
If you have a young boy, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to explore. And sometimes it's going to feel incredibly embarrassing. You're going to feel ashamed. You're not going to know what to do. So I just like this idea of like, they need us. And when we freak out, they feel like something's wrong with them.
Yeah. And it is actually okay to freak out. If you freak out, and the second you realize you're freaking out, you say, all right, hang on a minute. I actually turn around. Like I literally turn around, and then I just say, I'm so sorry. I just completely freaked out. Okay, sorry. And then I start again. And they don't, it's good modeling, right? We can lose our
it will get lower. You know what I mean? Like sit down, because like I think when we feel we get news like this, we get big and puffed up, right? So just sort of lowering ourselves down, even physically, helps us calm our minds.
And apologizing, right? And saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just so surprised to see you two crossing streams," or whatever.
Crossings. I love the way you talk. Totally makes me laugh.
This is something one can do.
What?
Apparently, if you have a penis, this is something one can do.
Absolutely, absolutely. All sorts of things. I wouldn't even start my stories because it would be too embarrassing for my children. Okay. So never mind. I want to just take a break for a second and of course breathe like Amy suggests. Also, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box so that we can go ahead and answer them. So should we move on to that really big, scary, nasty topic of pornography?
Yeah, if we haven't already freaked everyone out enough, let's freak them out more. Yay!
Woo, because guess what? Your boy's going to see it. In fact, he probably already has.
Yay! No.
Yeah, you could maybe just talk about it from a couple different perspectives. Like one, kind of how do we prevent it if there are people on here whose boys are young, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4. What can we do to protect them from seeing images that can be really disturbing, and you know, of course, also from preventing addiction, which is also a problem. And then there was the other side, which I already forgot because I just lost my train of thought. So just go ahead with that one first.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Oh,
so
I know.
Do you want to say it? So I don't. You got it.
So the other one was just the flip side, right? What if you catch them watching porn, or you? Oh, yeah.
Okay. So first of all, the average age boys see porn now is 9. 4th grade.
9. Did you hear that? 9.
9. Woohoo! Yeah. So it usually happens accidentally. So they Google horses and end up seeing images of horses, and then end up seeing images of horse penises, and there you go. True story, by the way. So it's accidental. They Google boobs. They Google penis. They Google vagina. You know, they'll Google stuff. And then they'll see things, and it's a slippery slope. So you yourself, when we're done, if you're up for it, Google boobs and see what you see. And so the first thing, and that even with young kids, I had a family who, 2-mom family, and they were chatting. One of the moms was chatting with her 5-year-old about how his body was going to change, and he was going to get taller, and his shoulders would get broader, and his feet would get bigger, and even his penis would get bigger. And so he popped downstairs and hopped on the family computer, and he Googled big penis. And he saw some mighty big penises. And I think the moms were more traumatized than he was. And so at that point, you know, the takeaway here is that our kids are bright. They see these devices as like an extension of their hand. And the best way and the safest way to help your kids navigate this is to have parental controls and monitoring software installed from the beginning on any device your child can access the interwebs on. So I do recommend that your kids only have 2 devices, 2 places that they can get on the internet. Not 17. It's too hard to track. No one has time for that. And the thing with monitoring software is that you can lock it all down. So they can't search for any sexual term. They can only go to certain websites. They have this very narrow parameters. And that keeps them safer, because you don't want your child stumbling onto something that will really confuse and scare him. That's usually what happens with the early exposure. You don't want them to feel like they've done something bad, because that's kind of the vibe when kids see grown-up sexual stuff. They're like, oh God, this ain't right, I'm bad. Like, this is bad. And so we want to prevent that from happening in the first place. And then the other thing is that when we allow our kids time online and they have a friend over and you don't have parental controls, it's really easy, like on YouTube, which we're experiencing right now, which is great, right? And Google Hangouts, that they can quickly find sexual stuff. It's not safe. Even kids' YouTube is not safe, because you can still see stuff in the sidebar. And you don't want to get that phone call from the other parent that, hey, my kid was at a play date at your house and they ended up seeing porn. Really not a good space to be in on a variety of levels. So I mean, everyone thinks not my kid, and I don't know what to tell you other than to change your thinking. Just assume your kid's going to see it and assume it's going to happen and assume it's going to happen at your house. You don't want that, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually haven't really been pro what do you call that, monitoring software?
Monitoring. Yeah.
Because I feel like people often use it, first of all, when kids are older as a way to prevent them, as a way to try to really control them.
Yep.
But in place of connection, in place of open conversations about sex and sexuality and pornography. So that's kind of been my take on it. So what I'm hearing you say, which I think is really useful for me to hear, is that when they're younger, there is a place for that that's actually really useful because they're actually not searching for these things. They're accidentally stumbling upon them. And if we put these as sort of like a, protective barrier, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's very different than I've ever thought about it. So I just appreciated that new perspective for me.
Yeah, and if it's just part of how your kids are online, they don't notice it, and you're not spying. Some parents are like, "I'm not going to spy on my child." It's like it's not spying because you tell them. We have monitoring software, so you don't see yucky stuff. And so if you start it early, then trust me when I tell you, it's way easier to let out the leash than reel it back in. And so as they get older, you open it up more and more. And by the time they're in high school, it should be wide open. They can go any place they want and they still know that you're watching. And if you see them try to access a website, it gives you an alert. It's like we still have it on Milo's stuff. It gives you an alert that says, hey, they tried to access a porn site. And the first time that happened at my house, I got very excited. And I was like, oh, looking at porn.
Of course, you would get very excited about that.
Only me. And then it turned out he was on a Reddit site following a thread about something. And I went and looked at it and I'm like, I have no idea why this, tagged you as porn and no worries. So it actually is a communication tool. And, Milo doesn't like it, but he made a mistake. We'll just say that. And so he had to go back to middle school rules and which means that things got tightened up. And so now we're back to loosey-goosey. And again, what we want them to learn how to do is to flex that muscle of self-control. And so this is what helps them do that. And so it doesn't let you off the hook for conversations. I still talk to him. He doesn't like it. I don't care. We still have conversations. And it's actually been kind of fun now that we're back on middle school rules because I get to see where he's going. And I'm like, what is that? And then he'll talk to me about it. And he's really into fashion, so he's going to lots of fashion sites. And so I'm like, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's this cool site. And then he shows me. So please do not be afraid of monitoring software. It is the smartest thing you can do for your child. And if you have a kid that's in middle school and you haven't done it, or an older kid, just say, I made a mistake. We should have had this already. I know you're pissed, but you'll learn, you'll adjust, and you'd be surprised what you learn.
Are you a proponent of the access being in a public space? I've heard people talk about that a lot.
Yeah, of course. But are you hovering?
No.
No. Yeah. And they're sneaky, right? I mean, that's the other thing. Like if every parent would do what I tell them and have monitoring software installed on every device, then, my son's friend, Ethan can't hand Milo his phone, and Milo, wouldn't be able to go anywhere he wanted to because Ethan would get in trouble. So they do that. Like
wait, what do you mean? I didn't follow that.
Ethan's phone doesn't have any monitoring software on it. Okay. Yeah. Milo knows that. Ethan knows that. Milo's phone has monitoring software. So Milo can take Ethan's phone and do whatever the hell he wants. And then he can get access to stuff that way on other kids' devices. So if every parent had monitoring software on the device, then we would know what our kids were up to and it would be less of a problem.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's part of the issue is like, I mean, I know that I feel that with my boys are now 11, 13, and 16. And it's like, I could monitor whatever I wanted here, but first of all, they understand all the tech stuff better than I do. And they have access to everybody's phones and computers and whatever. So I'm just like, I'm banking on like this close connection and a conversation about pornography to help keep them safe. I want to ask you some other things about pornography because I think this is a big issue. One, I think if we're going to be honest, Amy, there are a lot of adults who use pornography, both in ways that some in ways that they would say is positive, like it enhances their sex life. They use it for joy. They use it together, whatever. And then there's there's another group of people who, and mostly men. And this is another something else that I'm passionate about, because I feel like they use it in a way as a drug, like you would alcohol or anything else, to numb. And there are obviously side effects of this too, but like this whole idea of addiction, and how do we protect from that? So on the one hand, we have this idea of, am I lying again, right? Well, here, maybe somebody out here is listening. They're like, well, actually, you know, I kind of watch porn sometimes. Sometimes on a Saturday night, we'll bust out a movie or something, and it enhances our sex life. Are they being, you know, what would you say to a parent like that?
So porn is not for kids. It's not for kids. It's grown-up stuff. It is definitely not for children. And it's, you know, for when you're older, like in college, because what we want is bigger brain development. So that's the pipe dream, right? The reality is that they're going to probably see it sooner and maybe overuse it. I don't ascribe to porn addiction, but there's porn overuse, which causes it's more like an eating disorder. It's more comparable to an eating disorder. So this is controversial, what I'm saying.
Can you explain a little bit? Because it's interesting.
Because alcohol or drugs are something that we consume, and we use it to numb and to check out and to be in an altered state. Pornography is similar, but the way the dopamine works and all that stuff is different than with drug addiction. So with an eating disorder, it's a behavioral disorder. With porn overuse, it's a behavioral disorder. And so the porn gets used for escapism, and it also becomes chronic use because they get a dopamine hit from it's complicated. I won't go all the way in there. So this is controversial. There's plenty of folks who think about porn in terms of addiction, and that's a useful way to think about it, because it feels, it gets people off the hook, I think. I'm addicted to porn. Oh, well. But if I'm overusing it and I need help, that's different. So with our boys, one of the ways to help them avoid this is to have conversations about it, be really open about how it can be problematic, talk about how, you know, porn starts in the middle, right? It doesn't show the hand holding, the kissing, the fooling around. It shows the parts and holes. Talk about how, you know, most of the time people just have one partner at a time. People's bodies don't look like that. And they're seeing lots of amateur porn, so it feels normal to them. And again, just talking about like, look, these are adults are making the, you know, hopefully they're making this decision to do this. It's not healthy for you to look at this, because it just gives you the total wrong idea about what porn is. So those conversations help. The reframe around like talking about like, it's totally healthy to masturbate, but your best friend is up here. It's not here, because you can become dependent upon the pornography in order to masturbate. So that's, you know, again, you know, it's overuse. It happens. I don't know what the stats are. I mean, it kind of sounds like every boy and their cousin is using porn too much. That's not true. I don't know the numbers. I know it's lower than 40%. That's all as far as I'll go. So giving boys alternate outlets to get sexually stimulated. The Outlander books, super fun, full of sex. I recommend that people get GQ magazine and Playboy magazines for their boys, because those are hot men and naked women. You know, I'm not a fan of porn, but I'm also a fan of boys having a more healthy sexual outlet. And you can do more with a still photograph than you can with a video. Video tells you what to do and how things work. Playboy just gives you a chick with giant boobs and no pubic hair, which I'm not down with, but it's a safe alternative. And I know one of the questions we had was about a boy who's clearly taken really long showers with his phone in there. And no phones in the bathroom is just a really good family rule. There's lots of germs. It's gross in there, so the phone doesn't go in the bathroom. My guess is this family does not have monitoring software, so they don't know what he's looking at. So load it up, kids, and have these conversations. I mean, it's a lot of this, right? It's a lot of this.
Yeah. Okay. I want to just look, is there anything else that you feel like we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on that you feel like is important for moms and dads, parents or caregivers even of young boys in particular to be thinking about? We didn't really talk much about like the tech bit.
Yeah, I mean, we did. I mean, just lock it down. Lock it down.
Oh, but I mean, like, I meant like, sexting and that.
Oh yeah, same deal. Like you have to be super clear with your boys. By the time they have their own phone, which should not be until middle school, and then they should only be able to text with it. When they get into middle school, that's when this kind of sexting kind of stuff starts happening. So just be super clear with your boys. Just tell them straight up that if a girl sends you a picture of her boobs or her private parts, or if you send your picture of your dick, that's considered creating child pornography. It's a felony. It's super against the law. Sending it is a felony. It's a super against the law. It's called trafficking child pornography. Possessing it, having it on your phone, is trafficking child pornography, is having child pornography. So you just need to be really clear. It's not okay. It's illegal. They can get in a shit ton of trouble for doing this and having this. And then the other thing for boys is that no one wants to see your junk. Like maybe guys who are into guys want to see each other's junk, but no girl wants to see your penis. Like, no, thank you. And asking a girl to send pictures of herself is really not fair and bad. So just don't do it, because they can get in a shit ton of trouble because the laws have not caught up. The laws have not caught up. So if you live in a state where they're super conservative and super restrictive, your boy can get a serious ding on his record. One family told me that their son had, I can't remember what he had done, but it was something along these lines, and he got convicted of it. And then they went from, I think, Oregon to Florida, and he was a convicted whatever for this thing, and he had to register at the police station.
Wow.
And it wasn't anything more than this kind of dick pics kind of thing. I just had 2 phone calls in a row from 2 parents of young kids where it was Thanksgiving and the kids got a hold of a phone and they took pictures of their private parts and butt sniffing because it was hilarious. So just being explicit. We never take pictures of our private parts. They're a private part of our body. Why? Because that's the way it is. That's the rule. It's not safe or okay. And just be really clear.
I feel like there are just so many teens out there right now who have no sense of limits and privacy. I mean, I'm just thinking it's not even just sex, but drugs. It's like, okay, you're going to smoke pot. It's legal here in California now. Well, maybe not for teenagers, but let's say it is. Yeah. Then they like post pictures of themselves smoking bongs on Snapchat or Instagram.
Yeah, they're morons. I mean, they're just so stupid. Their brains aren't developed, so they have no if-then thinking. They just think, if I take a picture of myself smoking from this bong, I'm gonna look cool. And then I've done this illegal thing and now there's evidence, right? Yeah, they're just, yeah. So I mean, just talking about all this stuff. And again, there's no, I wish I could say, here's the magic wand, this is the thing you can do. But we do know that the more informed our boys are about sexuality, relationships, dating, consent, drug use, the better they do. They make better decisions. The more we parent without being mean, the better they do. The more willing we are to talk about stuff and show that we're willing to talk about stuff by opening our mouths. Just saying, I'm happy to talk to you about this. It's not enough. It's not enough.
Can we go back and talk? I feel like we were sort of on this pornography thing, and it's a bit scary and big and negative. And I think it's important also to remember that there's a lot of beauty in sex and relationships, and we want our boys to grow into healthy sexual beings and emotionally intelligent beings who communicate well and ask for consent and have healthy relationships. Can you maybe give us a more specific sort of, you're really good at those talking points, maybe sort of ages and stages of positive things that we can be sharing with them about sex as they grow?
Yeah. So I think one of the first things to do is when they're really little is compliment them and talk to them about what a good friend they are. And when they do something nice, say, oh, look, you were so nice to your friend. They fell down and hurt themselves and you made sure they got help. I love seeing you. I love seeing that in you, because you want to build the idea that sexual relationships really work best when there's a friendship in place. So talking about how to have a good friendship with boys and girls and everyone. So talking about that, talking about what that looks like, reading books about good friendships, complimenting them, talking about what that looks like. So we want to plant that seed, because that's just relationship 101, right? And then as they get into they're getting to be a little bit older, so 8, 9, 10, you say, hey, at some point you're going to want to start dating people, and, talking about having crushes and what that feels like. And again, like emphasizing, sex is for later in life. We're going to talk about this a lot. One of the big parts of being in a relationship is that you have a friendship and you're able to tell that person anything. And I think that basis of healthy relationship is core. And unfortunately, they are watching us way more than they are listening to us. So if your relationship is struggling, get help. Like I've been married for 25 years. We get help. Like, it is a tall order. Forever is a tall order. And so mind your own behavior. So if you're talking shit about their dad in front of them, that's not okay. If you never compliment your partner, that's not okay. If you don't let them see you resolve relationship, like sometimes Carrie and I'll have a fight in front of Milo, and then we'll get our shit together, and then one of us will come back, it's usually me, and say, hey, I'm so glad we talked that out. Like, I feel better, I love you, and let them see the resolution. Then they're learning how to do that in relationship. And then really focus on, the best, like when you talk to your kids about having sex, talk about it. Like, say, most people have sex for pleasure. It's something they agree to do. It's not for kids because their hearts, minds, and bodies aren't ready for it. But when people do this, they agree to do this. It feels really good. And we'll talk a lot about it. So when you're ready, you're really ready in your late 20s. Just determine that.
Ha ha ha.
Ha ha ha. I know, a girl can dream. That's all I have to say. That's my hope. So I think that really stressing that coming at it with a sex positive attitude, like, this is a great part of life. It's for later in life. It's kind of like driving, right? Like, we would never throw our kids the car keys. Good luck out there, right? Now they are mandated to take classes, right? It's too bad. And they're like, sex and relationships is the same thing. Good luck out there, which is what most of us got. All right, you know what goes where. Use birth control. Good luck out there.
I have another question.
Yes.
Because I think I have clients who are all over the world, and I've just been living overseas for 3 years. And cultures, as because you've just been talking about the Netherlands, approach sex and sexuality differently. And I noticed, I was in Israel for 3 years, and there, teenagers, they have boyfriends, they have girlfriends, and they come over and they spend the night and they go to school together in the morning, and it's like no big deal. And here, when we came back, I had to have this conversation with my 16-year-old. It's like, okay, well, you've been in this environment for a certain amount of time. You need to know that, like, parents here don't think this way, generally speaking. I'm not sure really what my question is. I mean, maybe it's like, do we just kind of go by our cultural norms, or maybe I just want parents to know that there's not just one way of doing things.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, what happens when you're maybe this is the question, because I remember this when I was a teenager, telling my mom my boyfriend's spending the night, and she was just like, no, he's not. And I was like, yes, he is. And we had this like whole thing, and I was, of course, hard-headed. And anyway, if teenagers want to have sex, they're going to find a way to have sex, right? So, and I, of course, I'm a teenager, so I say, well, what do you want me to do? Like, do it in the car? We're doing it anyway. Like, we might as well be home. Oh my God, I think she was going to kill me.
Yeah.
She didn't, because you see here, I'm still alive.
Yes.
But anyway, what a hard moment for her as a mom, right?
Yeah.
What a hard parenting moment. What do we do when our kids want to bring a partner home?
So this is totally a family values thing. And if you're a parent of a young child, just trust me when I tell you your values are going to evolve when it comes to sexuality. And they've definitely evolved for me. In those countries like Israel and the Netherlands, where they have these when they have these really great teen sexual health outcomes, those families allow if there's a boyfriend-girlfriend committed relationship, the girlfriend or the boyfriend can spend the night. It's a safe place for them to have sex. There are going to be condoms there. And so this makes people really uncomfortable, because it's like, I'm condoning the sex. It's like, well, like you said, I'm doing it anyway. it's really about keeping them safe. It's also about respect, because that goes two ways. Like, it's a privilege to have your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend spend the night. And so if they are loud, rambunctious, obnoxious, causing a ruckus in your household, then that's a problem. But I personally believe that parents need to get over them. Sorry, again, I'm judgy. Get over themselves.
It's okay. We're both parents too, so we need to get over ourselves too. We'll include that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm over myself. Like, if Milo ever has a partner, they're well, but it needs to be a committed relationship. I'm not having casual sex in my house. Like, you go be casual at somebody else's house. But if and when he has a girlfriend or boyfriend, then they can have sex here. And my husband is pretty hilarious. And he says, the rule is we don't want to hear it, see it, or smell it. And condoms.
Oh my God. I really want to know, like, how many people on this call right now are totally flipping out.
Probably half of them.
Your faces. I just want to know, like, are you like shocked?
Yes.
Or, like,
I mean, and this is shocking. This is shocking. But you have to think about this stuff before it's on the table. I've been thinking about this since my kid was 5. Right. And my values have evolved. I used to be a no way, Jose. And now I'm like, please, because there are going to be condoms here, and you're going to be in a safe place, and you're going to be in a relationship that is committed, whatever that means when you're 17. And you're going to be safe. And I have a friend whose son has really trained them up. And she called me about 2 months ago, and she's like, like freaking out. And she knows her son's been having sex with his girlfriend. And they were like, there were rules at their house where she wasn't allowed to sleep in his bedroom because she lives in Portland, and they'd go back and forth. And I was like, honey, give it up. Like, she walked in on them in the family room. And I was like, you got to give it up. Like, there she's like, come on, quit it. It's not working. So now they're in his bedroom. Way better, right? Way better. And so I've been with her. This is 3.5 years of this while this relationship has evolved and while she's evolved. So I think our kids are here to teach us, right? As much as we're here to teach them. And again, this is a values thing, but just please know that kids who have lots of sex education, boys who have sex positive communication, who can talk to us and we talk to them, they just do better. They do better.
Awesome. I'm just going to scroll through these comments and see if there are any that we haven't answered yet. Looks like Amy asked the best way to tell my son about sex. 9 years old, hasn't asked yet. Well, we did talk about that, but maybe to just emphasize it, or I could just sort of say what I think I heard you say, which is that we're not waiting until they ask, right? Because this is something a lot of parents feel like, oh, well, they haven't asked, so I haven't said anything. Yeah,
no, they don't ask us why brown rice is better than white rice. They don't ask us why they have to, well, sometimes they do. Like, this is just a matter of life, and they don't know we're open if we don't open our mouths.
Okay, awesome. Next. Pornography we addressed. And I think you did a really good job of addressing how to, talk about consent without instilling fear. I don't know if there's anything else. We didn't really talk about fear. We did talk about the nasty situations that our boys can get into sometimes. But maybe you want to say a little bit more about that. I mean, the question is how to address consent without instilling fear, yet still highlighting the importance of the matter. And I think that this is tightrope that we walk. We're in this era of Me Too. There are a lot of public figures who are being taken down for nasty behaviors. And we're worried.
Yeah.
But we don't want, we want to protect our boys, but we also don't want to scare them so that they have to be like, can I hold your left finger?
Right.
Sort of take all the fun of it. I mean, we are sexual beings.
Yeah. So I think part of it is our tone. So if we say, if you do this, this is what could happen to you. If we say, look, this is happening, I want you to think about, if you can possibly count to 10 before you send that picture of your dick. That's probably smarter. This again is a tall order, but part of it is our tone and starting earlier and just saying, our world's changing. It's going to be hard. I mean, we just say to Milo, this is going to be hard on you and it sucks. And then I'm snarky and I say, but it's been super fucking hard on us for a really long time. So we need you. I'm sorry you're going to suffer. And someone's going to suffer. And so how do we help them?
Like through our suffering and then their suffering, we're talking women and men, like we're going to get to a more balanced place of respect. I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah. And so just saying, this stuff is hard. You can always talk to me about it. You can text me if you're worried, just making it really clear that you're open to support them and support them through this. And also be really clear that they can get in a lot of trouble, more trouble than ever before, if they say something sexual to someone and they, if they're flirting online, they just need to be really careful and mind their manners. And one thing, one way to help kids like take note is to say, if you wouldn't say this to their face, then don't say it. Right. So
I say that to my boys, and I've heard them repeat that to other people. It's something that they've found incredibly useful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like if you wouldn't drop your pants in front of a girl, then don't send a dick pic. Right. So like, and with the young kids, you can practice this all the time. Like you can say, like our young kids are really influential. And so you can say, hey, if you wouldn't say a mean thing to your kid to their face, then, you wouldn't want to send that in the email or the text or whatever. So like just kind of talk it through and demonstrate it, of course. Like I'm having a furious fight with your dad over the text, and you say things you would never say. Mind your manners. Right? Get on the phone. You'll behave better, maybe. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Texting is like the bane of our existence, I feel like.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just scroll through real quick and see if there's anything else that we missed, just to make sure everybody gets their questions answered. Well, as Diana, parent of 2 daughters, who's concerned that parents of boys aren't having these conversations. So Diana, that is exactly why I wanted to invite Amy to talk to all of these parents of young boys, because we do have a responsibility, and there are many of us who are taking it very, very seriously. So you can sleep well knowing that we're working on it. Yeah.
And you can also ask, like, just casually, how are you talking about consent with your boys? Right? Like, casual conversation. And they probably will say, God, I don't know how to do that. And if you've watched this, then you can say, yeah, this is what we're doing with our girls, right? We're talking about safe touch and agreement and all that. And that's an entree, because sometimes parents aren't thinking because they've got so many distractions, right? So if you're able to be here with us through this full hour, you're like a little powerhouse now. So gently help your friends and your family and your boys, most importantly, have these kinds of conversations. Be a model for them. Because I think that when we see our friends doing something that's really smart parenting-wise, like I know I copy my friends, like that's brilliant. And then I'm over there doing that thing. And my life's better. And my kid's life is better.
Yep. I love the idea that we're on the same page. We need to be allies. And I think working with the assumption that we are all doing the best that we can, and we are all open to learning to do better, things will go better for both boys and girls. Yes. And, as a parent of girls, I think there's also, you can share what you learned here as well, because they might not be so aware, of how it's hard, how this environment that we're living in now is hard on young boys.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that we're putting the onus back on the girls or the women. That's not what I mean at all. But I think it is important for them to know that it's a scary space to navigate, and they're going to make mistakes, and they're trying their best. And even if your girls have a tip, if they're with a guy and they can say, hey, sometimes it might look like I want to do something, but I don't. Can you just be sure to always ask me?
Yeah, like have a safe word even.
Helpful. Have a safe word. Exactly.
Yeah. Safe words are great.
You want to say a little bit more about that while I'm scrolling?
Well, having a safe word, which feels like grown-up stuff, because like safe words are usually used for folks who are in BDSM type relationships, but you could call it a consent word and just say, just have them agree on a word. That means sometimes it's easier to say popsicle than it is to say stop. And the safe word is like, hey, that's enough. And instead of saying, hey, that's enough, they can just say, whatever, banana. Just
maybe kidding. Not banana.
Maybe not banana. Mango. Well, yeah, peach, mango. Like they agree on a word. And then it's easier to say, that's too much for me, instead of saying that's too much for me. So, plant that seed. Like, why don't you guys just have a word that you agree on, that you both agree that, like, if she's doing something and he feels uncomfortable, he can just say banana. And they agree on the word. they agree on the word. I think that's smart, right? And it'll even though it's sort of not clear, it's great because it's just easier to say peanuts, whatever, banana, than it is to say, hey, you know what? I'm not down with this so much right now. So could you just stop, please? Right. Banana. And then if they doesn't respect the banana, then that tells her something and that tells him. So if she's not respecting or the other partner's not respecting the banana, then that's like, you know what? This isn't working. And again, it requires some prefrontal cortex function, right?
Which is why sex is for adults, right? Which is why
for later in life. For later in life, we want to fully develop prefrontal cortex. 28. Anyway, so
yeah. Okay, so last question here. Kristen's asking, what would a good monitoring software be? And she also says, thanks for all the info. So yeah, we didn't talk about that. Do you have a...
Yeah. So there's a couple that I like. I use Custodio. It's spelled Custodio. And if you go to my website, it's in there on my resources page. And it's super easy to install. It's super easy to use. You can put it on every device. There's an app, so you can check the app to see what's going on. You can set it up so you get an email digest every week. With young kids, I just recommend that. With older kids, maybe daily. And there's that one. There's also Circle. It's Disney Circle, and that's really good to use. It's works really well. It's very flexible. And internally, like in your device, you can set up parental controls as well, but that's not enough. You've got to do both. And Custodio is like $49 a year for I don't know how many devices. So it's pretty affordable and it's worth it. It's totally worth it, especially with parents of young kids, because you want to institute early that this is how we roll in our family.
Great. And any last words? I think we'll bring this to a close. Any last words before I thank you?
These conversations with your boys can be really fun and funny. They're super important. I mean, if we want to raise healthy, happy, whole men, that's what we're doing. We're not raising boys, we're raising men. You have to talk about this and start with something small that feels good and easy, and then just build on that. And as far as I know, no one has ever died from talking about this stuff. And I only know of one person who almost threw up. So, and it was the kid. So don't let your discomfort get in the way of raising a really healthy kiddo. And don't let the fear around our current cultural climate get in the way. I mean, this means, to me, the read on this is get ahead of it. Like, get ahead of it. Make sure your kid is the smartest kid on the playground when it comes to sexuality and relationships. It's safer for them and might be harder on you, but in the long run, it's going to be better.
Love that. And Amy, if people want more from you, if they want more information or to learn more from you, where can they go?
So my website is birdsandbeesandkids.com. And then I'm active mostly on Facebook, and it's Birds, Bees, Kids. And then I do have an online course for parents, which you can check that out. It's just a deeper dive into these kinds of conversations. And I do have one on talking to boys about sex. There's a webinar there. So it's where I post all my webinars, and it's $39 a quarter, and there's tons of info there. So if you're feeling a little like, oh God, that's the place to get what you need, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Amy of Birds and Bees and Kids, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your joining us. This was an incredibly important conversation to me, and I know to many parents of young boys out here. So it's it fills me up to know that we're offering this and having these conversations, and because that's what's going to change the world.
Exactly. So thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a real treat to get to know you and to do this. I like helping.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.